Hi everybody, welcome to Helly's Abstract Art. As promised, I'm just about to do a geode pour. It's being done on an MDF 3mm thick board that my partner kindly cut to shape for me. The only preparation I've done to this is I've spray painted the back black, and then I've put 4 coats of just normal house paint on this side, so that the MDF obviously doesn't soak in too much. Round the edge we have a blue Scotch painter's tape. Might get Poppy? Excuse my dog. Blue Scotch painter's tape, and underneath, to protect the bottom, it's just a normal painter's tape. The resin that I'm using is Mastercast 1:1. It's absolutely brilliant for geodes. It's a slightly thicker resin, which makes sort of the colours not bleed into each other quite as much, as long as you don't work it too much with the heat gun. Go away, Poppy. And today we're using Blanc by Artiste and Avocado, Winsor & Newton Emerald Green, Dr. Martens Bombay Inks Teal, and last but not least is my Montana Gold, and that is actually gold. I've already pre-mixed all my colours. This is the gold. I've also added some glitter to this one, nice green. This is the teal from Dr. Bombay Inks. This is the Winsor & Newton Emerald. The Artiste Avocado. And my white. And I've measured out about 500 mils, I think it was, of the resin. I have got a bit of clear there, which I'm going to pour over the glass parts in a minute. So here I've mixed up, I'm really lucky, I had someone, lucky for me, somebody that had a smash door. So I gathered the glass, and what I've done is I've coloured it using alcohol inks. I literally put some in the pot, sprinkled the alcohol inks over the top. They've been sitting for a day or so, but they've given it a nice kind of green hue, which is perfect for this one. And I've also got just some plain of the same broken glass, but obviously you can look online and find crushed glass. One good thing is an aquarium substrate. If you have a look on eBay, in the aquarium part you can quite often find small pieces of the thing that they use for the bottom of the tanks. Right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pour my glass in the centre, which is going to be obviously the centre part of the geode. I'm going to just lay it down and then try and shape it as best I can, and then I'll put a clear layer of resin over the top of that just to hold it in place. And you want to have a fairly decent amount of glass so that you can get the shape that you want, and have, you know, quite a dramatic effect really, so it doesn't really get lost in the resin too badly. I'm hoping this is going to be enough. So we just pour that and manipulate it roughly to where I want it to be, trying really to follow the curves of you know, my geode pattern that I've already got here. So I'll just tuck those bits in, obviously being careful not to cut yourself if you're using crushed glass. So that's not too bad. We'll spread that out a little bit there, and maybe take it up a little bit further up to there. you don't want this bit too thick unless you're going to do multiple layers of resin to cover it completely. Okay, so once you're happy with that shape, which I think I am, I'll get my clear resin, and I'm just going to pour that over the top. Not too thickly, but thickly enough that it keeps the resin and the glass together. But I don't want it leaking out too far, so that's why you don't want to pour too much. Okay, I think that should be alright. And then just give your glass a bit of a tap down so that you make sure that you've got no huge gaps in there. Obviously you're going to sort of put more resin around the outside anyway, but you just want to make sure that most of that is where you need it to be. I'm quite happy with that. Just wipe my hands off for the next bit. So that's your centre part done. Now you've got to think to yourself, what would I like around that colour? And I had a special request. This is actually a commission for somebody, and they've asked for emerald green to be incorporated. They wanted a more greeny toned one. They've actually ordered a green one and a blue one. They've already bought the blue one that I made. So this has got to be on the green side. So I'm thinking we've got quite a dark centre there, maybe a slightly lighter colour. So I think I'm going to use this avocado. And all you're going to do is just pinch your cup slightly and pour just off the edge of where you want it to be, because obviously the resin spreads. Although luckily with Mastercast it doesn't spread quite as much as the more liquid ones do. But you want it to be able to work it to where you want it, to be able to push it into the edges. So I'm quite happy with that. That looks quite nice. I have got these plastic ones. These are like garden things that you can write on when you put your plants in. I'm going to just use that to push the colour into any gaps that I've got. So here, you just want to push that colour in. Up here, just give it a nudge up to the edge of the glass. Just make sure that there's not too much of the bare MDF showing. But that's the idea of doing this side of it, the white. It actually brings out the colours of what you're pouring. You know, if you wanted a slightly darker version, then you could do this side black. It's totally down to you, but I prefer to have this side white because this is the side that's on show. And this is what people are going to be looking at. So I'm quite happy with that. So I think next we're going to do, I think this teal colour actually. So always give it a stir just to make sure that it's all in there. And I can already feel with the cup that this is heating up. So obviously with resin you haven't got a lot of time, so you've got to have a vague idea of what you're doing. So again, we're going to step slightly away from the previous paint, and we're just going to pour that round, trying to follow your outside line to a certain degree, because obviously that's your shape, so that's what you're aiming for. You don't want uniformed lines, you want it to look as natural as you possibly can. So, you know, if you want a thin line like that, I'm quite happy with that. That I'm not going to touch. I'm just going to let that do its thing. And this is what I like about resin. You know, although you can put it roughly where you want it, it's also got a complete mind of its own. It will go off and do its own thing. So, right. I'm thinking now that maybe I'm going to have my other thing of glass around this edge. So now that I've got that shape with the teal, let's try pouring a bit of this. I might get another thing for this actually, so I'm not pouring too much at once. So again, you know, be very, very careful handling the crushed glass. So we're just going to sort of pour it round. Oh, that's a slightly large piece, don't think we want that. Round the edge of that colour, so that we're getting a rough idea of where we want it to be. And what I like about sort of doing this is it gives it a real 3D effect. I'm not so worried about this side because obviously I can just move the glass over to where I need it, but I maybe should have done this before I laid the other colour down, but hey, you live and learn. So that's roughly where I want it to be. And with that stir stick, we're just going to lift off. It's the only thing with having dogs and working with resin. You do end up with bits everywhere, sadly. So we're just going to make sure that that's all over roughly where we want it to be. Obviously take out the imperfections that I've got here. So we're just going to manoeuvre it over up against the edge of that colour. I mean, I'm not too worried about it at the moment because I'm going to be laying down a bit of resin over the top. So, and you can actually layer down a coloured resin as well. You know, it doesn't have to be see-through. I normally start with a see-through just because that's my preferred way of doing it. But, you know, you could layer a colour. You could put, you know, the avocado over the top of this. But for now, I just want that to stay that way. And if I want to add a layer of colour, I can do it another day when it's dry. So, right, I'm quite happy with where that is. And I think we'll lay down a bit of clear over the top of that. Just to keep it in place as best we can. Obviously follow the line of what you've just done. Follow the line round. Again, not too much because you don't want it to bleed out too far, otherwise it's going to influence the next layers of colour. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Just double check that it's all, give it a bit of a nudge. As you can see, that bit wasn't in the resin. So just tapping it down. Making sure it's where I want it to be and trying to keep it as neat as possible. So I'm quite happy with that again. So now we've got to think about, you know, what are we going to do around this area, and I'm thinking that at this point I'm going to use the Winsor & Newton emerald green. This is obviously being an ink. It's actually sort of quite transparent, so I want a fairly decent thick line of this. So you're going to adjust your pour as you go round, right up to the edge of the glass with this one. If it bleeds through, then, you know, that's what happens. Make it neat up. Maybe take it up slightly, because obviously you want the colours to come up into this. Quite happy with that. Right, as you can see here, you've got a slight bit where that just needs nudging in because it was sitting proud, it didn't look quite right. So far I'm quite happy with that. I'm wondering whether to put a bit of gold around that centre. Maybe just round the edge of the glass, because we're sort of getting very, very green here. So with the paper cup, because this is spray paint, always use a paper cup with spray paint because it will just eat the plastic ones alive and you'll end up with a whole lot of mess everywhere. So a little bit of gold down there, and just allow that to melt into the other colour. Like I said before, you haven't got an overly large amount of control with it, so you've got to kind of pour it. You can guide it, but the resin's going to do what the resin's going to do. I don't like it looking as bobbly as that, so I'm just going to give it a bit of a tease round to take away that bobbled effect. And as you can see with the Mastercast, because it's a much thicker resin, it's not bleeding like one of the thinner ones would do, which is perfect for this. That actually looks a bit more copper than gold, but never mind. Okay, quite happy with that. I think maybe we're going to have glitter on that. Now this is just a glitter that I got from a UK store called Wilkinson's, and I've just added as much glitter as I thought I would need. I want it quite thick, I want it quite glitzy. You know, play it by ear, you'll get a feeling for it. So we're just going to pour this as best we can around the centre. And then we're going to allow it to bleed into the other colours. Obviously there I need it a bit thicker. And like I said, you haven't got an overly large amount of control with this. It's going to bleed, it's going to do what it's going to do. You just have to hope that you can get it in the right place. So you're going to pour, you know, as much as you need to fill most of the gaps, but then we're going to manoeuvre it with the stick, and we're just going to give it a nudge into almost the edge of the other colours. And obviously where the resin's self-levelling, at the moment it looks awful because you think, oh no, you know, I've got a great big hole there. We're going to hit it all with a heat gun anyway, but it will start to level out as long as it's not got to the point where it's setting. You should be fine. So manoeuvre that up there, just give it a tease into the other colour. You know, and don't worry. At the end of the day, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're not going to like it. So what do? The next day, once it's cured, you just do another layer. And I think, you know, that's what helped me get over the fear of making a mistake with the resin, is to think to myself, do you know what, it doesn't matter if I make a mistake, I can always just do a re-pour the next day. Okay, you're going to use a bit of resin, which isn't the good bit because it's not cheap, but, you know, it's workable. You can do something about it. You haven't written it off forever. Right, I think I'm going to hit that with a heat gun for a little bit just to see what it'll do. And this is just a really cheap heat gun. It's got 2 heat settings. I think it was about £10 on eBay, if that. So I'm just going to do it on the lowest setting. So as you can see, it helps get rid of any bubbles. You know, if you hold it on the colour long enough, it will actually start to move the colours around, which is just what I'm doing because I'm not over keen on this avocado centre. But don't ever hold it in one place for too long because it will actually burn the resin, and then that just makes it look ugly. So that's that. So, because I'm really not happy with that avocado, I think I'm going to put a bit of a teal in there. And we're hoping we're going to do a little line. And I must say, when you pour one of the ones that are transparent into one that's opaque, you actually can get quite good effects. I like it. Right. So I think we'll use the white. So this keeps coming unstuck here, but I'm not overly worried about it. I've protected the wood as best I can. I've covered my surface so that if anything comes out, it's not going to do any harm. It just means that obviously it's going to take a bit more to clear up the back of it, which I'm sure you all know already is not that hard to do. So again, you're coming out slightly from the edge so that you can manoeuvre the paint and the resin into where you want it rather than it just spreading in by itself. Looks like I might have to make some more up. So I'm just going to manoeuvre that around, spread it out a little bit. Like I say, I'm not really too worried because I'm quite happy to do a second round of layers with this anyway. And we'll just hit it with the heat gun and get it to warm up slightly, and then you get more manoeuvrability with it. So I will do a bit of heat gun on that. Give it a bit of a tilt, see if we've got any movement. Obviously I don't want it to move too far, but like I say, with this mastercast it does set quite quickly. Like I say, I'm just tilting it, moving it slightly, keeping an eye on all of my colours, making sure there's nothing's moving too much. I'm just going to give this swizz round. Just disturbing it all, you know, trying to manipulate what I can. Sounds like my dog's doing something she shouldn't be. Poppy? No, good girl. She was doing something she shouldn't be, as per usual. So I'm just gonna get these to meet up here. Just using my finger to mush the colours together. So I definitely think this is going to have a second coat on it, because I'm not 100% happy with the colours. But you can't always get everything right. So I'm just moving the white over to the green, allowing them to mix. And then I'll hit it with the heat gun. Just a little bit, not too much. If you're wondering what I keep going and doing, I've got a rag that I put alcohol on, and I wipe my hands with that, although it's gone through my glove onto my finger, so I'm just giving that a clean. Because last time I actually ended up with a chemical burn because I reacted so badly to it. So I'm just going to renew my alcohol on my rag. Clean my hand off properly. So as you can see, it's doing it layer by layer, you know, and just trying to control very slightly how and where the resin goes. Fresh glove on, so I'm just going to hit that with a bit of heat and a bit more power this time. See if we can manipulate that a little bit more, fill up the gaps. Like I say, I definitely needed more resin, so I'm thinking maybe that I should have done about 600 mils. But hey, you live and learn. So I'm just going to sort of scribe this edge just to break up that stark line. As it has up here. almost crisscrossing the colours into each other. Because obviously in nature, you very rarely get straight lines. And at the end of the day, that is what we're trying to, you know, almost recreate. You know, as a natural form, but man-made. A bit more heat with that. And here I'm heating it, getting it hot either side, and I've burnt it slightly there, and start moving the colour around. It will start blowing the colours over. And I don't know if you can see, but here it actually just bubbled, so I actually overheated it at that point, which is a shame, but that's set. You quite often find, because it's very warm here today, obviously everything's heating up really quickly, so it looks like I'm just going to have to do another pour tomorrow, because obviously I'm not sort of getting the movement that I need with my colours now. And it's better to call it a day now and then, you know, do another pour again tomorrow, and then I can sort anything out that I've got an issue with, which is obviously now where I burnt it. I'm going to have to sand it down and then do another pour, but hey, that's what being a resin artist is all about. And it just goes to show that, you know, you don't always get it right, and that's just how it is. That's the name of the game. So I'm going to sign off, and I will be finishing this one tomorrow, and I shall do another video for you then. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, and perhaps you could subscribe to my channel. That would be great. Thanks for watching. Bye now.